the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Today's edition of the Spot Track Podcast is presented by Bettor Edge. Visit bettoredge.com today. Use code SPOTTRACK. Get $20 on the house. And the house is what this is all about. Take away the vig, take away the juice. You make the bet. You set the price. You go head to head. You open up a big community bet. You are in control of the entire process. The best way to make quick, easy, safe, reliable money in sports gambling. That's bettoredge.com. My name is Mike Ginnitti. It is Monday, March 24th. The NFL buzz has cooled a little bit. So we're going to take a back seat a little bit with that as we feverishly work to try to find breakdowns and numbers for all of these sort of ancillary second wave free agent contracts, some extensions and restructures. You know how this works. It's a race to the finish line now as we're up just exactly 1 month away from this NFL draft, and the rumors are flying. A couple quarterbacks still to figure out, a bunch of roster decisions still to be made. I still think there's one or two ample trades to happen here, possibly at the tight end position. I think Baltimore's been sitting on their hands a little bit here in terms of who they thought they could get. I know there's extensions in-house with teams like that, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Kansas City forthcoming. We still have Trey Smith on his franchise tag. That's a lingering storyline. We'll get to some storylines Thursday with where things stand NFL-wise, but it's a baseball show because this is opening week. For those who dabble in that, March baseball, certainly I'll be one of them. Dan Soemann's here, and we're going to go through a pretty in-depth offseason recap, sort of gimmick style, right? We're going to pick a free agent contract roster. We're going to talk about our favorite trades, just the notable standout things that should impact 2025, and some awards and divisions and World Series betting odds and picks at the tail end as well. It's our annual MLB preview with a quick look back to the 2.5 months that was, and a long winter with billions of dollars spent on the Mets and the Dodgers. Dan, it was a expensive offseason for two of the teams, right? I introed this as this was the offseason of the Mets and the Dodgers, and a lot of the teams that tried to be the Mets and the Dodgers, and the Dodgers just sort of doubled down on being the Dodgers. And I don't think there's any other way to look at this. And we've already seen them for 2 games at about 40% capacity with the injuries already piling up. I think they have 11 injured list players already. I think there's only one other team with that much to start opening day, at least how I'm projecting things right now. This is the tale as old as time, though, right? This is what they are. This is how we get to a 5-month regular season. And cold weather March baseball is here. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And the Dodgers have shown that they're capable of building a team that can get to the finish line. And now I think all intents are that they've built a team deep enough to overcome pretty much anything at this point in time. Even some ugly starts here from Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, and certainly some of the pitching staff. We'll start with the Dodgers, and then I think we'll probably trail off into some more of the smaller teams as we get through this process here. But just your overall thoughts on what they did, and I guess where you see it all coming to a head here in 2025.
Yeah, I obviously am in the camp of loving everything they've done pretty much. I mean, trying to poke holes in where it could go wrong, I guess. Starting pitching, they tend to break arms pretty frequently. They do have some depth there already to cover that. But I mean, beyond that, we even saw, in the Japan series, missing Betts and Freeman. Yeah. And not to mention the number of other guys on the injured list you just outlined. They were still just fine. So even if, I'm poking holes in something that there isn't, holes to poke. So, but just trying to see where it could go wrong, I guess, pitching.
Yeah, look, at some point the injuries are unsustainable, but they kind of stormed through the World Series last year and the championship series against the Mets with a 50% roster, and some of their late season acquisitions not only won them the World Series, and Tommy Edman and Kiki Hernandez rejoining, but those are the 2 players who starred in the Tokyo series to start the 2025 season. So it's not an accident. They have all the analytics. They have all the scouting. I know you've been puffing their chest up a little bit here for a long time now that they do everything well. They don't just try to buy a roster. They don't just sit around and wait for other people's trash and try to, fix that. They have identified a process, and they have backing from multiple ownership pieces, obviously, in a major market to basically have carte blanche. So when they have identified 5 outfielders that fit their system, they afford them. They pay for them. And that is the real reason that so many people are pissed off about the Dodgers in 2025, right? It's that not only are they spending the money, but we all know that they're damn good at spending the money. They know exactly why they're spending their dollars. They're not just throwing baloney at the wall here.
For sure. I don't have a ton to add there. I mean, they got the best of the best free agents out there for the most part, and they spent on it. They're not afraid to. Any shortcomings on the roster, they're going to be willing to upgrade mid-season. So I have no fear. I know I just laid out one simple reason why it could go wrong, but I think that's a long shot. Even I was just trying to take the contrarian view, if you will. So
I guess that's one final question we can build in here. They have been so active, and obviously they're expensive as hell, and we'll get to that a few months down the road once we have a clear onset of what these luxury tax payrolls are going to look like. The opening day payrolls are fun, but they're pretty jaded. A lot of it is there's so many players that start the season on the 60-day IL for injury purposes, but also for some roster purposes and semantics. And we're a long way to October 1st when these payrolls actually lock in place, essentially. So I like to wait a little bit before we get too deep in those weeds. And obviously the Mets and the Dodgers and the Braves and the Phillies are going to be at the top of this list. The Yankees, of course. Do they have the Dodgers again? Do they have a lot of outs here? If this 50% roster sort of hangs around for a while and some of these injuries do linger, is there still enough juice in this prospect pool that certainly they've graduated and depleted and traded at times to go out there and make one or two stinger moves in July to try to make sure that they have enough ammo to get to October or November again?
For sure. I guess it just depends on what the need would be. I mean, if we're playing this out, like the starting pitching, it could, if they have some injury issues with their starting pitchers, then obviously depth could get thin. But if they have a healthy rotation for the most part, that's going to be a point of depth alone, which people will be looking at. Like Dustin May is going to break camp in the rotation, but that's mostly because Tony Gonsolin is going to start on the IL. You have Clayton Kershaw coming back. I mean, Bobby Miller, who was like a real breakout candidate last year, is going to start in AAA. So like there's depth there, plus a number of intriguing position player options that could be included if they wanted to. But I mean, they're just a machine by all accounts.
We've seen teams at times bulk up like this in all sports, all the sports that we track and follow and try to understand the trends. Is there anything too much? Is there a world where surplus can be a negative in this sport? It's a long season. There's attrition. There's injuries. It's understandable what they're doing, but to do it in February and sort of break camp and head into opening week here with, especially in my opinion, their bullpen is a surplus right now, to the point of where they traded two of their pieces, right? Their essential eighth inning guy in Brazier last year, Ryan Brazier, is on the Cubs this year. And there's a couple other pieces that they were able to basically just non-tender because they knew they were going to upgrade them with Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates, etc. So I think that's never going to be an area of concern. You can always find ways around that. But just looking at the outfield, looking at some of the position players, is it at a point where everything's so healthy and that whole construct, that whole franchise is in such a positive mindset that you put egos aside and you just play ball? Or is there any world where they've done a little too much that could actually come back to bite them in the dog days at some point in time here?
I don't think so. I don't think it's a bad problem to have. I mean, you can create a problem when you sort of hoard talent at certain positions. Like we've seen Like my team, the Guardians, have done that where they, middle infield talent, they get a clog of middle infielders. They don't know what to do. That ends in a Tyler Freeman trade, which we saw a couple days ago. The Orioles have gotten into this where they have a number of high-end prospects who probably are MLB ready and deserve playing time, but they don't really have paths to full-time jobs for all of those guys. We just saw Kobe Mayo get sent down, pretty upset about it, but pretty vocal about not breaking the camp with the Orioles. Yeah. So we see how it can kind of backfire there. I'm not going to sit here and make a case for the Dodgers having too much talent being an issue at any point during the season. So
maybe wishful thinking from a Mets fan. All right, let's get to some of these fun little gimmicks I have planned for our MLB recap / preview. We're going to start with free agency, which, for all intents, wasn't the sexiest winter that we've had in terms of Major League Baseball. I think last year was one of the bigger ones, so it's sort of a letdown here. But obviously, this starts with Juan Soto and trickles down a little bit from there. We did have a couple of pitchers go near 200, a little over 200. Here's the deal. I've given you position by position all the signings. I know you know most of these out loud. It's just a matter of sort of refreshing some memory here. I want to build out a 9-man roster to some degree. Okay, so let's actually make it a 12-man roster. All right, I want to go through DHs, starting pitcher, reliever, and then position by position. And this doesn't have to be your favorite free agent signing. I want you to frame this as the free agent signing you think is going to be most impactful. When we're talking November 1st, when we look back position by position, what is the biggest storyline from free agency at each of these major position groups coming off of a winter contract here? Let's start with the starting pitchers. There's some juicy ones. We had some first contracts that finally got done. We had a couple of stinkers in there. And we've got a Max Fried contract in New York that most people don't even remember happened because it happened so long ago. And so many other things have happened to the Yankees that I think it's in the weeds right now. But this Max Fried contract in New York is going to become top billing once this season starts, especially if it doesn't go well out of the gate here. What's your pick for the most impactful projected starting pitcher contract from free agency?
This might be a layup. I promise I'll get a little bit crazier down the line, but I think Blake Snell is like a bona fide stud signing for the Dodgers. Obviously, that's easy to say, but I mean, his shortcomings fit very well with that roster. What you just said, a super deep bullpen. He's a guy that can get you 12 strikeouts, but only through 5 innings sometimes. He's not like a deep 200 innings type of guy typically. But that fits really well with what the Dodgers are trying to and want to do. So I think that like to put it a different way, if Snell ended up in a number of other places, I would feel way, way less confident in saying that. So I just like the talent plus the landing spot on this one. And I don't even have a ton of concerns about the money plus term. He signed 5 for 182, which is just over 30, almost 36.5 mil AAV. I know it's high, but it's not like a 9-year deal or anything like that, just to spread out the luxury tax number. So I really don't have an issue with that one.
Yeah, it takes them through age 36, which I think that's become sort of the line of demarcation for these starting pitcher contracts, the bigger contracts. Anything past that is really fool's gold in terms of decline, injury, et cetera, et cetera. We know how this goes. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there was a significant amount of this contract deferred, $66 million. So it did lower his luxury tax salary pretty significantly. Should have been 36 before. It's actually down to 31.3, which sounds like nothing, but that's 5 rookie contracts that the Dodgers were able to fit in under the tax threshold because of that deferred money. So obviously the bigger story of the off season is the deferred payments and how the Dodgers all made this work. But like I said, we will assess that with the luxury tax conversation we'll have in a couple of weeks here. But I can't disagree with you. Let's stay with Snell here for just 30 more seconds. It didn't seem like he loved his time in San Francisco, but he did perform. I mean, he gave him 20 starts at a low 3 ERA, pretty good WAR, pretty good whip. All the standard stuff looks solid. tough ballpark, right? Definitely a tough ballpark to pitch in. Let's just assume the Giants made this offer, and maybe they weren't even going to defer. It was going to be a flat 182. Do you just pick the Dodgers because they're the Dodgers right now, Dan? Or what made him leave that San Francisco organization that desperately needed, I think, an impact starting pitcher, and kind of landed on a couple of piecework guys instead of having to relinquish Snell this offseason?
I think the money, like, I know I just made a case I don't have a problem with the money. I think that price tag would have scared off other teams, and not that the Giants couldn't or wouldn't afford it, but I do think new front office with Buster Posey in charge, they may not have been ready in their timeline to commit that kind of money towards that type of player. I don't know. That's just speculation.
Do you think because you mentioned it and it's not a secret, do you think the fact that he's not a long inning guy and somebody like Posey coming in with maybe a little bit more of a traditional landscape, did that poo-poo that whole conversation a little bit? Because I'm sure there are teams that looked at somebody like Snell who came out of Tampa Bay, who has this 5-inning mindset, and that's just not for them. They're looking for a little bit more longevity out of the rotation because they don't have 4 closers in their bullpen like the Dodgers do.
Yeah, that certainly could have been a factor, and that's why I alluded earlier, like the landing spot alone, it's just a really good fit for the kind of player he is, plus what the Dodgers have and how they can supplement his weaknesses. So I plenty of other teams wouldn't have wanted him at that price, the type of, the profile that he has. I totally understand it. I guess in a 1-year sample, there's like a lot of suddenly, I know they have depth there, but there's suddenly a lot of instability in that rotation with, Roki Sasaki being so young and injuries and, et cetera. So I think it's a nice stabilizing move for them. Expensive, but still solid.
Okay, fair enough. Let's go to the relievers. Not the biggest year for relief pitching, but solid. And, no surprise that the Dodgers have the breadwinner at the top of that list. Who are you going to pick in terms of the most projected impactful relief pitching contract of this offseason?
Well, I don't love this. Yeah. I mean, it's really difficult. I mean, there's so much projection in all of these guys, if you will. Like easily the best signing, most expensive signing, Tanner Scott, but he's going to get thrown into this like huge, like this bullpen of multiple options. So if he struggles at all, the leash, they gave him a ton of money. I don't want to say the leash will be short, but they will move to a different option quickly to get him straight and then move back to him. We also saw in the Japan series, they didn't pitch him 2 days in a row. There were back-to-back save opportunities. They didn't pitch him. He is a lefty. That might have some, they like to do matchups. There's some stuff that factors in there also. So all I'm trying to say is like from an impact standpoint, I think he's going to have a huge impact. I think from like viewing him as strictly a closer, I think there's some reasons to be a little bit more pessimistic about that. I mean, we have Clay Holmes coded as a starter / reliever.
Yeah, he's a both. He came in as a reliever, and he's obviously going to start for the Mets. Yeah, exactly.
So that's a gray area contract where like he's paid more as a closer, but it's kind of a tweener. So honestly, I don't really love any free agent relief contract. Any relief pitcher contract in this offseason. But if I guess I had to pick one, I like AJ Minter quite a bit also, not to be a homer for you, but he's a really nice setup stabilizing option for Edwin Diaz, who has shown some question marks in recent years, if you want to put it that way. So I think it's a nice price, a nice player, in a nice spot. So I'll take that. I'll say this. Not too exciting.
I'll say this because I'm trying not to tangent too much off of what you're talking about here, but we had 12 relievers get at least 10 million this offseason. That's good news. And by the way, something we're tracking, I know quite closely internally, is just how money is shifting around a little bit in this league. We talked about the first baseman devaluation. We'll get there. in a couple moments. But, there is something to pitching as a whole starting to become one entity. You know what I mean? The starting pitching stuff, as we're talking about with Snell and other pitchers and other teams and other philosophies, is devaluing. There's no question about it. And to the point of where Major League Baseball itself is starting to figure some things out and may start test piloting some rules to try to ramp that back up because they don't think it's good for the game. But in the meantime, relief pitching's making more money. Starting pitching's slowly starting to make less money, and it's starting to come together as one whole. So I'll take that away from this reliever pool, that certainly the Tanner Scott contract isn't overpaid. There's no question about it, especially for what you're saying. They didn't accidentally sign Kirby Yates a couple of weeks later. They did that on purpose to supplement and to platoon Scott when they need to, both for injury purposes and obviously for situational purposes. So the Dodgers definitely have a surplus here, and they paid for a surplus here with what they're going to do with Trinan, with Scott, with Kirby Yates, and then a couple more players that they had internally. So that's part of this overpay. But you've got the Royals and the Angels and the Red Sox and even the Athletics with 10 million plus contracts this offseason, 2 relief pitchers. That's all I need to say there, right? I mean, the Athletics have a $10 million relief pitcher. That's how we know that things are absolutely turning a corner, and it's not good news for starting pitching. I know you understand that process, but we'll continue to track that closely here.
Yeah, for sure. There's always going to be a market to some degree. It's good to see some of these, not straight up closers getting money as well. So that's a promising signal.
Agreed. Yeah, the setup guy is getting some love. All right, the catching market is weak, but I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to make you pick a catcher. It does not have to be a high paid catcher. You can just simply give some sort of storyline that you're watching for 2025 at this position. Actually,
this one is kind of easy for me. I like Danny Jansen quite a bit. We saw him sign with Tampa Bay on a 1 year, $8.5 million contract. He's a really great defensive catcher. We've never quite seen him get the full share behind the plate. I say that in jest because catchers don't really ever get the full share anymore, but he's going to get the majority of plate appearances behind the plate. Great defensive catcher, has a little bit of pop, and he's playing in Tampa, which is obviously playing in the Yankees minor league, spring training facility, which is a hitter-friendly ballpark. So we could really see him pop for 20 home runs plus is not out of the question for him in a more prominent offensive role this year.
He's a fascinating dude, Dan, because they had, he spent 6+ years in Toronto. They continued to have high catching prospects come up to the system, come up to the major league level. And Danny Jansen kept taking majority of shares away from this, mostly because of what you're saying. Super defensively reliable. It's a big deal when you're trying to ramp up a starting pitching rotation like they've been trying to do for 20 years in Toronto. You just got to have the right guy behind the plate, even if he's not the most prolific hitting catcher that you have on the roster. Alejandro Kirk gets his extension. Danny Jansen walks in free agency. They're certainly turning a leaf over in Toronto. I agree. I think it's Tampa Bay's gain here, at least for a couple of seasons, if they can keep him around. Seems like the kind of guy that switches scenery, has a big year, and becomes now a 15-year catcher. You know what I mean? Just one of those guys who's bouncing around, a Maldonado type player who continues to latch on with somebody, maybe even contenders for a while. But this is the year that he breaks that mold, right? He becomes, like you said, a more power hitter. He shows that he can actually hold down a full slate of games as a catcher on a Tampa Bay team that's reeling, but also has pitching and is phenomenal at containing, developing, and promoting pitching talent. So to have this guy be the sort of facilitator behind the plate for this pitching staff is a lot of trust from a very, very prominent pitching coaching staff, as I know you know.
Yeah, for sure. And he only, like I said, he only got a 1 year deal. This could be a pretty important little period for like the trajectory of his career, because let's say he doesn't perform well next year, he's going to probably run into another 1 year less AVV, less money contract. So That's the difference between a 1 year and a 3 year deal. Maybe is if he performs this year. Why, he's a good defensive catcher, like I said twice now. That's going to keep him around plenty. He can hit 220. The good defense will, and a little bit of pop will keep him around. But that could break him off a nice guarantee next offseason if he lives up to it this year.
All right, the first baseman, it was sort of like one of the bigger positions with Goldschmidt and Alonso and Christian Walker sort of winning the offseason here a little bit. But look, there's an Anthony Rizzo still sitting out there. We've got some names, certainly some older names that I think will latch on here eventually. But where do you stand in terms of these first base contracts?
I mean, overall pretty gross. So, I mean, we'll just go through the top couple real quick. I mean, Christian Walker is probably the best signing in a vacuum of the of free agency. Like 3 for $60, good term, good price for a player at a need for Houston, pretty desperate need, I might say. I think when that one signed, we both kind of were like, ooh, that feels a little bit cheaper than we thought he might go. So that I like that quite a bit. Pete Alonso, obviously we've talked at length about like how that all played out. I expect him to have a good year in New York, regardless of what happens next offseason, what kind of market he might meet next offseason. The Yankees were desperate for a first baseman, but they get, 40-year-old Paul Goldschmidt, who a lot of hope there. I personally think he will do well in New York, but he's already like having some back issues. That might get supplemented with the aforementioned Anthony Rizzo, like you said. So maybe that turns into like a duo there. I mean, beyond that, there's not a ton of impact down.
No. The Walker deal, it was early, and at the time, I thought it was a nice price. Do you think there's a little bit of buyer's remorse with that price, having seen how the rest of this position played out over the past 6 weeks, or do you think it's still a pretty good number for Houston?
I think it's fine. I think from the outside looking in, some people could assume that, but I don't. Like where I think they could have had buyer's remorse was then the Isaac Paredes trade happened, and then they were revisiting talks with Alex Bregman and later Nolan Arenado to play at third, which would have pushed Paredes to second or first base. So like, all I'm saying is maybe they had a little bit of remorse in terms of like filling that spot instead of leaving it open to move around some of their other options. But in terms of like price plus term, I don't really think there should be too many qualms about that one.
He's an underrated player. It's a good number, and it's the only contract he's going to get because he's 33 going on 34, and this is his twilight contract. So he was going to maximize somewhere one way or another this offseason. Sure. Speaking of depletion, let's look at the second baseman situation. Just pick a name. I mean, it's going to be, I assume you're going with somebody like Gleyber Torres here, who's got a pretty nice fit here in Detroit, but obviously not a position that gets the free agency pretty well.
Yeah, again, the top couple, Gleyber Torres probably would be the pick here, even though that's still just a 1 for 15 sort of prove it deal. I mean, Detroit is brutal to hit in the first couple months of the season. So we'll see like if he can really match numbers that he has been putting up in Yankee Stadium in recent years. And Ha-Seong Kim probably doesn't, we probably don't see him until early, late May, recovering from a shoulder surgery, I believe. So, I mean, beyond that, it's a different Ha-Seong Kim. I'm probably butchering the difference in pronunciation there, that the Dodgers signed as an international foreign professional player, but he's going to start in the minors for the ho-hum Dodgers. Like, that's like kind of how crazy their team is. But beyond that, there's like no impact to be had at second base, which is why I know previously we've sort of talked about second base being a trade spot for teams.
Still think it's going to happen. It did happen in a couple instances this offseason. We'll get to it with some of our trade talk, but yeah, it's just one of those positions that, teams are moving third baseman over to second. Teams are certainly moving, shortstops over to second. It's become a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of who plays there, which is good and bad. It's still a really important defensive position, a very important defensive position, especially now with the shifting rules that are in place. You have to be able to cover a pretty good amount of ground here, but we'll see. I do think this is one of those areas where, like you said, if the contenders feel like they're deficient at this position, we will see some early movement from the trade markets, which is always good news because, this is a 5.5 month marathon here. All right. There's only one shortstop to talk about. There really is. And it's Willy Adames, the player that San Francisco decided to go extremely big on financially this offseason, 7 for 182, nothing deferred, even there's actually some incentives built into this thing. It's a big one. And you could tell that they were sick of losing free agent battles with top players, and they went above and beyond what Milwaukee and all these other teams were putting out there for this player. Toronto was in at one point in time. Is this an overpay? Is this a good move? Is this team ready for this kind of contract? What are your overall thoughts on Adames being sort of the big fish that lands in San Francisco finally after a couple of misses?
Yeah, this seems like it was the Buster Posey flag plant signing. Yeah. It is by all accounts, he's a guy you want to build around personality wise. He's apparently really great in the locker room. He's got power. He can run a little bit. He stole 20 plus bags last year. I don't really think that sticks. That's more of a walk year stat, if you will. But good defensively. I think maybe, in a vacuum, is this an overpay? Maybe, but I'm still not even super sure about that. I'm fine with it. I think they committed to him. They're trying to do a quote culture change in San Francisco. Right. I'm fine with them making him the guy. Yeah.
I'm never going to balk at a team paying a strong defensive shortstop as a centerpiece to a rebuild that can take you places, especially because this team has a rotation. This team has young arms and they have the means to go and acquire more as needed. They have to figure out how to hit the ball. And this guy is a bit of a 5 tool, which, I'm still a geek for 30 years later with the sport. So I love it. Do I wish they had landed Judge or Ohtani or one of these bigger fish? Yeah, of course. Because that's a fun ballpark when they're mashing the ball out of it. But they're going a different direction. Buster Posey's clearly trying to play small ball because the game is going that direction a little bit. The game is telling us we're not supposed to go up there and try to hit threes every time, right? We've got to play a little bit more of a gap-to-gap game, and this is that type of player. Now, he's going to hit 25 for you still, but he's probably going to hit 45 doubles in that ballpark, Dan, and that's pretty fun stuff for a kind of a restart that this front office needed. So I like that this is the fish they finally landed on because defensively, it's also a bit of a groundswell for them as well. So third base, we mentioned Bregman. That's got to be the name, Dan. You follow this stuff, especially the American League, closer than most people that I know. Is Alex Bregman going to be the third baseman on opening day for this team, for this Boston Red Sox team?
It sure sounds like it. I believe they actually just announced earlier this morning that Christian Campbell is going to break camp, which is one of their highly touted prospects. So he's going to likely fill in at second. I assume Bregman is starting at third. I do think a lot of that is shoulder related, though. I know what's been discussed with Rafael Devers not wanting to switch positions or DH. I think there's more to it with the shoulder. Let's say if Bregman is only a one and done in Boston, there's obviously room for a return for Devers in the future to go back to third. I think this year though, there's some injury concerns there that will just keep him off of it regardless of Alex Bregman being there. So I think it all works out in the end, despite kind of, the jabs that have been thrown previously.
I think winning will solve all those problems. And I think this is one of those teams that is going to win some ball games this year. Let's just keep that on the surface. A couple of outfielders and a DH, and we'll get out of here quickly, man. Soto's a big fish. I assume you love it. Is it too much? I mean, obviously they went as big as humanly possible, the Mets, to bring in this guy. And, all signs look like it's going to be amazing for indefinitely. But is this too much for a baseball contract? Truly.
Yeah. So, I mean, this could, I'll try and rein it in because this could spur a long conversation. That's probably, he's worth plenty of money. Yeah. It's too much for a baseball conversation related to the Ohtani conversation, in my opinion, that a year later, Juan Soto gets that money and now sort of screws the whole process. That sounds anti-player. What I'm saying is Vlad is comparing himself in terms of Juan Soto's number, which is obviously the benchmark that happens in every sport. What I'm trying to say, though, is that Ohtani accelerated that threshold so far in such a short amount of time that then Juan Soto was the next player in line and sort of tried to jump that number. And now we're going to see Vlad try and jump that number. I think the timeline sped up on all of this way too quickly after Ohtani, a generational type talent, got the contract he got. But I'm trying to say that as Ohtani was given that contract as a hitter plus a pitcher, although we laid out the fact that the majority of his career would probably be as a hitter. But so I'm sticking, my foot in my mouth then saying Juan Soto / Vlad don't deserve to then raise that bar even further. It just seems like things moved real fast, real quick is the best way for me to put it.
Yeah, we could have an entire show on this, and maybe we should, because it is the look back point that really matters this offseason the most. There's a lot of reasons why the Juan Soto contract should never have been compared to Shohei Ohtani, and you mentioned a few there, but me and this deferred stuff, it's not the end of the world for me because it is legal. It's just a stipulation. It's not any, everybody can do this. Everybody can make these offers, but the Dodgers are only going to be putting in $460 million of their cash into escrow and letting the interest do the rest, right? So that's it. And that is the luxury tax that they're going to have to account for, is $46 million for Shohei Ohtani. So what we're saying with this Mets contract that doesn't have deferred money, that is longer, it's a 15-year contract versus a 10-year contract. But, Ohtani's getting the money over 20 years. I should say that because of the deferral. So Juan Soto's getting $765 million over 15 years, which is a $51 million luxury tax. What this is saying is that Juan Soto is worth $5 million more a year from a tax standpoint to the Mets than Shohei Ohtani is to the Dodgers.
Right.
And that can't be correct. It just can't be correct for all the reasons you've laid out, for all the reasons everybody knows. Even if Ohtani only pitches for 3 more seasons and it's 12 starts a year, he's still doing that. He's still doing that and doing whatever Juan Soto is doing at the plate, because we know that's going to happen. Okay, he showed us with half an arm last year that he can still do all world stuff when it comes to the plate. And Soto's going to do the same. But the numbers are way, way too expanded at this point. Should Ohtani have ever gotten the $700 million total? Probably not. I mean, the Mike Trout's 426 was the bench. That was the mountain. And Ohtani went, 700, even though, and this is the correct way to look at it, even though it's only $460 million of the Dodgers' money. So, in other words, the Angels were at 426 with Trout, and the Dodgers went to 460 of cash with Ohtani. And now the Mets have gone to 765 cash with Soto. And if you look at it that way and only that way, it's insane. Okay, it's insane. Yes, it's a longer contract. Yes, all those things matter, but that's cash. That's Steve Cohen's cash. He has it. It's not ours. He can do what he wants with it, but it has changed a lot of things. Okay, it's probably the reason the Baltimore Orioles don't have a couple guys signed. It's definitely why the Toronto Blue Jays don't have Vlad Jr. signed right now, because that number that probably was 375 for Vlad is now minimum 500. And it has nothing to do with Vlad becoming a better player over the last 12 months. It has everything to do with Juan Soto getting $765 million cash in an escrow account. Okay. And it has changed. It has changed sports. It's going to change football contract. It's going to change a lot. And I know it shouldn't, but it will, because this is a social media, everything matters for everything world. And it's going to change a lot of things. So It's an overpay. It's an overpay for the game. There's a lot of agents that are thinking differently now because this exists, because Steve Cohen has now made this a reality. And we'll see what happens. I think Toronto probably just got priced out of their own superstar. How many other teams did as well because of this trickle-down effect?
Yeah, for sure. You articulated that way better than I did. I'll just add one tidbit. This is like what the point we're all trying to make is we've been spoiled in recent years with Judge and Ohtani and Soto and next year Vlad. It's going to get, with a lot of these pre and ARB extensions, it gets bleak the few years beyond that. So those guys, are we saying or is the league saying Jazz Chisholm is going to make $500 million in 2027 or a guy of that caliber, right? We can't possibly be at a point where the next big guy in the next year who's under 28 years old is just automatically making above what Ohtani and Soto and inevitably Vlad is going to make. That's the point we're trying to articulate.
But I will just say this, because you're right. Age is a huge reason the number is what it is. Okay. A lot of owners felt way more comfortable going bonkers on Soto because he entered the winter 25. He's now 26. Heading towards the season. But we are seeing more and more teams bringing up their players 1 to 2 years earlier than they ever have been before. They've been pressured to do that by the way the game is going now, right? You're seeing 18, 19, 20-year-old superstars hit this league when, in the past, Dan, it was you're not even touching a major league field until you're 23 because we don't want you to be 26 in free agency. We want you to be 29 for this reason, so they could do what they did to Judge and what they did to Pete Alonso this past season, which is suppress as much as possible. I think there's a world where there's 4 more versions of 26, 27-year-old top free agents hitting the market. Not to this degree. Juan Soto is a bit of a unicorn right now, but we're going to have some guys that age getting to that point. And does that mean now that if they were 400, they're now 600? It might. Right. We might see a couple more insane contracts before, the next couple of years are over because now this precedent has been set. That's all I'm saying. And by the way, this is my team, so I'm not going to kill him too much. I'm super happy he's here. I'm not thrilled with the numbers. I'm not. I don't think this had to happen. But in a vacuum with Ohtani still fresh in our minds, it's just how we got here. And there's no question those two situations are directly linked. There's no question about it. Okay.
Agreed.
Give me a DH, sir. Your favorite DH signing of the offseason.
I mean, we could technically not even have these guys coded as DH. Just kidding. I mean, it's Jorge Soler. The Angels offense should, in theory, take a step forward. I'm never really willing to put my money where my mouth is on them, but they did make some intriguing moves that I do think it will be better. Nice. And he's a nice piece in the middle of that lineup.
Okay, quickly, your favorite extension of the offseason, the thing that you think we'll still be talking about at Halloween because it happened. There's some candidates here, man.
Well, for me, it's Tanner Bybee, but
sure. The latest early Cleveland extension that looks like it's going to be valued tomorrow.
Yeah, it could be huge. I'll go in a different direction. The Christopher Sanchez Phillies extension is super intriguing to me. He's a super hot breakout candidate this year. I mean, He had a good end of second half last year, but he's getting a lot of Cy Young type buzz. So if they signed him to an extension for $22.5 million, it takes him basically through the end of his controlled years with a couple club options on the back end. That if he takes the steps forward, people think he looks the part in spring training so far, but if the projection comes to life, that could be a massive value.
Massive. I mean, ARB1, he's got slated for $3.5 million. That's probably half of what a top starting pitcher hitting ARB1 should be making in 2025 and 2026. But yeah, they went big on extending Zach Wheeler at the end of last year, their ace, and then they got tons of potential value out of what could be their number 2 pitcher by the end of this year. for the next 5-6 seasons, which that's troublesome for anyone else in the NL East. Let's put it that way.
Well, let's just dance around a couple other ones quick, because this is my.
Can I give you mine real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Brent Rooker signing with the Athletics on 5 for $60. There's a lot of reasons I like this. The Athletics are paying. Yes, they're being forced to pay. This dude's a stud, and I thought for sure he was going to be the next trade piece and land on some contender like Chicago or even the Dodgers before the dust settled with this free agency stuff. And they zagged and gave this guy good coin, really nice structure. And here's the reason I picked him. I don't know if you follow this dude on socials. This guy's got the CBA basically memorized, and
really?
He's super in depth in the financial aspects of the game. So when people, that aren't as nerdy with the stuff as you and I are, try to comment on some of these arbitration salaries or the extensions that happened, he's in their comments explaining, kind of snarkily explaining, no, you're wrong. You don't understand how things work. Guys who got extensions with control left have to have lower salaries early on, and then they can inflate because, they're going to make $4 million in arbitration. You can't just hand him $40 million this year. He's explaining what we should be explaining in people's comments on other extensions in the league. It's beautiful. So this guy has a special place in my heart. And for that reason, and for the fact that I think the Athletics might be building something here, and he's certainly one of the cornerstone reasons why, I'm excited for that extension.
I think that's a great one. And then they followed it up with a Lawrence Butler signing. So, they got two of these locked up in addition to some other spending they did this offseason. Again, we know that they're being forced to, but it is still nice to see them take a proactive approach with these type of, a forward-thinking approach with these types of deals rather than just signing Lance Lynn 1 for $12 million just to get above the threshold or something. You know what I'm saying? So, Justin Martinez, this one is sexy to me too. All offseason, he's a guy with incredible talent. All offseason, they've played coy with, we really like AJ Puck. He's probably the closer. And that could still be true, but Martinez will either be the closer or fill a dynamic, high leverage type role for the Diamondbacks. This contract sort of eliminates them needing to play games with him one way or another. If he lives up to his potential, and he does close games, we've seen how quickly young dominant closers can get pricey in arbitration, like Josh Hader. So I'm not saying he is Josh Hader. I'm simply saying this is I like this for their overall process and the player itself in terms of locking him in, whether it's in a high leverage type role or as their next closer. I like.
You got a lefty righty thing with Puck and Martinez too, so you could slowly ease him in and sort of platoon him as needed. Puck's got one more year of arbitration, even though he's 31. So again, the writing's on the wall. Eventually you're going to hand this thing over full time, but now you've got value and control on two players that can potentially be your back end guy. And speaking of this team, they've got Jordan Montgomery now in this bullpen as a long reliever, and they can trade this thing and add a bat and add a starter, whatever they have to do here. This is a team to watch in a just monstrous division, but whenever they start doing stuff like this, right? When they extended Corbin Carroll before we even knew who Corbin Carroll was, and then went to the World Series an hour and a half later, they are not shy about telling us out loud they like themselves. And this is an example. This just happened last week. This is one of those examples of them telling us, hey, don't forget about Arizona in 2025. And I'm not going to, just so you know, I'm not going to forget about them despite their division.
Oh no, super fun. I 6 months ago, I was of the perspective they might try and take a step back.
Rip it down a little,
of, I think 3 straight years of their all-time high payrolls. You had a number of guys, Eugenio Suarez, some big contract, Christian Walker came off the books. You had a number. It was kind of a spot where they could take a step back financially. Instead, they doubled down. They had access, Corbin Carroll wanted to sign with them, so they opened up the books for that. They re-signed Eugenio Suarez. They did the Geraldo Perdomo extension earlier in the offseason. So they're really going for it, and it's fun to see. And I like the pieces in place. Sometimes we zoom out and say, well, it's fun that they're going for it, but it's not really that that intriguing of pieces. But I really like what they put together there.
And by the way, they did what you're asking. They did shed a ton of salary, and obviously not re-signing Christian Walker and a couple of players. They're down to about a $214 million payroll to start the year. That's about $30 million of space, and they could either add with that space. They could also make a splashy trade, not just Montgomery, Dan, but they did just option Jordan Lawler, a player who is one of their top prospects still. Might not have a spot, not necessarily speaking, over the next year or two. And if that's the case, if they think that they can leverage him a little bit, that's a monster blockbuster prospect to move there for what could be a splashy July, August, fill some pieces in for a contention role and for a wild card run into October. So I just like all the opportunities this team might have over the course of the next 5 months.
For sure. It's just tough division, but I like them as a wild card team for sure.
It's just going to make them be more aggressive, so like a Lawler trade isn't probable, but you might have to be that splashy to keep up with this National League right now. And they should, because they have a lot of pieces in place that at least make them worthy of it. Tell me why the Kyle Tucker trade to Chicago isn't the trade of the year.
Well, it seems like maybe the Cubs were the only ones who didn't know that he was going to always go to free agency. Yeah, I don't know if I'm wrong.
He's definitely a rental, right? That's the answer. He's definitely a rental. Yeah.
And they gave up some at least intriguing pieces, in that trade, in Cam Smith. Hayden Wisniewski is, has value. They're going to move him to a starting pitcher role.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It seems weird. Like they exchanged numbers, but they were one of the ones that signed a 1-year deal even after exchanging arbitration numbers. I don't know.
I love the player. And I know you love the player too. Yeah.
To me, it's simply because he's going to walk at the end of the day. And they have some internal replacements there. That's not the concern. It's just like they kind of gave up some valuable pieces for
just for perspective. We're like an hour away, but probably by the time you're listening to this, the pieces they gave up, you mentioned too. Cam Smith's going to be named the starting right fielder to replace Kyle Tucker in Houston, and Hayden Wisniewski is going to make this rotation. He's going to be the number 5 pitcher in this Houston rotation. That ain't nothing, man. You're talking about young talent that's ready to start at the major league level today, literally today. This seems like a huge win for Houston, despite the fact that Kyle Tucker is one of the top 8 most productive players in baseball over the past 5 years, right? He's been an absolute stud. But let me put it this way. When Houston couldn't get the deal done, everybody else should have known they weren't getting that deal done either.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like, they tried like hell and ended up just giving that money to Jose Altuve. And when that happened, it should have been red alert, sirens blazing, that you are not getting a trade and sign out of Kyle Tucker in 2025. And obviously they knew it, and they still gave up 2 massively important pieces to get the deal done. There's probably 10 teams involved. I'm sure there was a huge bidding war for this guy, but it's an overpay. There's no question it's an overpay for 1 year of Kyle Tucker, no matter what he does at Wrigley Field this year. I just hope it works out, because this Cubs team is fun. Kyle Tucker makes them legit National League contenders, in my opinion, despite the fact that they've got some pitching woes at the bottom of the rotation. But Houston's not going away because of this deal. They lost a massive productive player, and they're going to be in the conversation in July because of this trade. That's win-win, I guess, right?
For sure.
All right. Couple of quick, preview bets, and then we'll get out of here. It's we're at the hour mark, of course, because you and I can't talk baseball without going an hour. Tell me the sleeping dog sitting in these World Series betting odds right now, Dan.
Ooh, World Series.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, oh man, I don't even like this team, but the Blue Jays are kind of intriguing down the board. They do have a underrated, maybe one of the top pitching staffs in the league now with Max Scherzer joining. I know he's 40 plus, but they just have like a actual starting rotation with some offense, solid defense now, adding Andres Jimenez, Dalton Varsho coming back from shoulder surgery. Like I'm looking way down the board, obviously.
No, it's a good pick. It's a good pick. And I'll tell you why. It's been shit on the Blue Jays for 3 years now. And rightfully so, because they've kind of put all their chips into one basket every offseason. And when they don't win, the Ohtani race, the Judge race, whatever it's been, there's been a couple of pitchers out there that they've gone after as well. And when they haven't won that player, it felt like they didn't have a plan B. They just ended up patchworking some things together in February, throwing a team out there that obviously couldn't last for 5.5 months in the AL East. And now it seems like they entered this winter thinking completely differently. Now, were they in on Soto? Of course. Were they in on Corbin Burns? It sounds like it. And they were in on the Kyle Tucker trade. They had some irons in the fire. Let's put it that way. The Yankees seem like they're definitely injured. Let's put it that way. I'm not sure if they're completely ready to take a step back, but let's just project that they're going to take a little bit of a step back here, all things considered. Seems like Boston's going to go. We can spend a whole show on Baltimore and what they didn't do this offseason. Internal extensions, trade one or two of those prospects that are surplus, etc. The point is this: if Bo Bichette is Bo Bichette, and you've got Vlad Jr. as hungry as humanly possible headed towards free agency, now knowing his number starts with a 5, not a 3, when when the Yankees come calling and whoever else comes calling. I don't know that you could have a more motivated team. And I'll add one more layer that I know you know about. They non-tendered back in November a couple of players that are going to start this week for a couple of other teams, right? Specifically some bullpen pieces. And it sort of signaled, that they were ready to turn the page. And you and I were wondering, are they going to rip this Band-Aid? Is this a signal of we're going backwards here? We know we're going backwards and we have to start getting cheaper. And that wasn't the case, Dan. Are they markedly better than they were this time last year? I don't think so, but it feels like they're more confident about it. And I know Bo Bichette's a better player right now. And certainly Vlad, just being himself, can carry a team through a couple of months. I think they're a wild card candidate. So to make him a dark horse World Series candidate isn't foolish. Let me put it this way, though, before we transition off. Is it more likely that they are deep into the postseason in November, or they have traded Vlad Jr. in July?
Deep into the postseason is
I agree with you.
I've come around a little bit on the Vlad stuff. The more I kind of hear and let some of the things marinate, that
you think they find a way to make it work? Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff Passan says that the gap. He's one of these guys saying like the gap is not that huge. So at the end of the day, I think these moves they've made, like you outlined this offseason, where they are, if he truly is open to returning, I know money talks. I'm just simply saying if like he's not shutting the door, and like by all accounts, he's a homegrown player. Like he likes living there, and we've seen it, taxes or whatever the reason is, players have stayed away from going to Canada in recent off seasons. You already have this there. Like you just said, this could the top 6 is an impressive collection of talent
and different.
Yeah,
Anthony Santander was one of the Orioles' most consistent power hitters, and he now gets to sit behind Vlad Jr. in this lineup. That's not nothing. This is they've added some ample targeted moves this offseason they simply haven't done in the past. You know what I mean? Like it feels different this year.
Exactly. Yeah, and the starting stat. You like I said already. Barrios, Gausman, Bassett, Scherzer, Bowden, Francis. That's like 5 bona fide MLB starters on pretty much any team in the league. They signed Jeff Hoffman as a back end option. I think some of the confidence is from that move alone. Out goes Jordan Romano, who has some injury concerns, plus a shaky end to his Toronto career there. The more I talk through this, the more I like. Now they obviously have to get there, but if they can get there, this team is set up pretty nicely for the postseason, all things considered.
I like it. The division you think we should all be betting because there's absolutely value there.
these are. I mean,
is there a division that's up for a toss-up in your opinion? Is it Toronto again?
Well, I was just going to say the AL East is where I think the most value is, and that's mostly because I'm just scared of the Yankees, and they're obviously the favorites right now. Tons of people love the Red Sox as a sneaky candidate. Sort of the fact that they're a consensus sneaky candidate makes me want to go a little more contrarian. Like the Orioles are, we have been butchering them for their lack of movement, the weakness of the starting rotation. If you really want to consider like a Dylan, I know it's a big projection, but like a Dylan Cease trade to the Orioles would change the whole dynamic. And they're to me, they're probably the favorite at that point in the division, right? So at 3-1 in the division, they're one move away sort of with a wide open division. I kind of like that one a bit, but yeah, I mean, if we're looking way down the board, the Blue Jays again would be intriguing to me. I don't think the Rays are going to win the division, but I do think the Rays are a little bit better than people are giving them credit for right now. So I just walked through all 5 teams in the division, which is why I think there's some value.
There's value there. Yeah, there's value there. I'm going to throw a sleeper at you, which I've already discussed, but why not? Arizona's built to win a lot of ball games, and they're going to be streaky. You know what I mean? But they are durable and they are deep, as we've talked about. They have trade assets. They can make changes on the fly as they need to. There's a world, Dan, where this Dodgers stuff just overcomes them, and they turn into the Los Angeles Lakers. They turn into some of these teams, even the Boston Celtics, if you follow basketball this year, have lost most of the big games this regular season. And it's because of that. It's because it's the regular season. And we just don't have to have the gas pedal down 100% because we know what it takes in October and November. And this team does. And that coaching staff does. And they are not going to floor it in June and July and August. And there's a world where Arizona knows they have to and simply wins more regular season games than them. I just see that happening. I don't have a lot of faith in San Diego. In fact, I'm with you. I think they're selling more than they're winning in 2025. I think they're going to have to get a little cheaper, just all things considered. Arizona could steamroll this division through the dog day months and find a way in the very last hour to find themselves ahead of the Dodgers, which means nothing to the Dodgers, by the way. They're going to be in the postseason. They're going to be where it matters. Just don't count on them as slam dunk division winners because they simply don't have to think that way. You know what I mean? They can think differently than the rest of the league because they can just become a different team in October and November and still motor everybody down.
I don't disagree with the thought process at all. For anyone only listening to the last 5 minutes of this, that is not Mike predicting that the Dodgers won't win the division. We're just laying out a path.
There's a path where they understand what it takes to be championships, and winning the division in the regular season isn't part of that path.
We've already seen that. I think they publicly said they're already planning on sitting Freddie Freeman for day games after night games, things like that. I know he's coming off of it. That's more injury related, but still, like you just said, this team is built like. They're not trying to just get to October, right? They're trying to win the whole thing. So if they temper, if the injuries or pitching woes creep up at all, I totally think that's.
And by the way, they already have. So
right.
Their mentality should already be: we got to slow down a little bit. We don't care about May and June. So I'm just. Arizona at 12-1 is fun in March. Let's just put it that way. It's fun because I think they have a lot more ammo and a lot more reason to play regular season baseball right now. So quickly, just give me a couple of award names, Dan. We don't have to go too deep here. Just give me some guys that you know are going to be in this conversation in September.
Are
you on the Bobby Witt train, even though he's going to start the year in the IL here?
Bobby Witt.
Yeah. You think Kansas City has enough? Yeah.
I mean, no, I don't think they have enough. I mean,
what do we think about the award winners from last year? Ohtani's going to be in this conversation. We know that. I imagine Judge, though he's lost a lot of protection in the lineup, especially with Stanton starting the year in the IL. And if we have to get down into the rookie conversation, nobody's talking about the Pittsburgh Pirates. It's only Paul Skeens, right? That's the only conversation we have around their organization. And the only conversation you and I have about him are his baseball card and when is he going to have to get Tommy John surgery. That's not a great way to start a season, year 2 of your career. But is there any reason to believe that Paul Skeens can't go out and throw 30 amazing starts again?
Oh, no, for sure. I mean, for sure. I know you typically look at me for the hot take. I was trying to come up with someone down the board. For sure. Henderson, Bobby Witt, Paul Skeens, all prime examples of guys who will be in the thick of the race for most of it, probably, right?
I'm going to give you my curveball. It's not really a curveball. He's one of the most exciting players in baseball. I like him for different reasons. I think your old buddy Tito Francona makes Ellie De La Cruz the next superstar of this game. He already is a superstar, but I'm talking like to the level of he becomes a social media icon and he becomes the video game player. He's already got those intangibles in him. You put a coach that, number one, is a player's coach, and number two, will tell him exactly what he's doing wrong in the moment, right? I mean, he's not going to take any gripe from this dude. So whatever immaturity has to get worked out of him, and every kid that comes up has that. He's going to get it figured out in April and May of this season. And this dude could be terrifying by the All-Star break. And I think that's breakout candidate to the nth degree. So I'm putting my stock in Ellie De La Cruz because of Tito Francona on that bench right now.
Yeah. And he loves to run. So
Tito does.
Tito.
He could swipe 70 bags this year.
Exactly. Both of them love to run. So, right. I like that.
All right, that's enough. It was a good offseason. It wasn't a great offseason. If you're a Dodgers fan, you thought it was a great offseason. If you're a Mets fan, you're considering how good it's going to be to see Juan Soto in the Mets uniform in a couple of days, but the money's scary, right? The money's just going to add up. The last time the Mets went big, it imploded in 6 months, and they basically sold for parts the entire next season. So there's a little bit of buyer's remorse with this whole Steve Cohen era, but Juan Soto's a Met. I don't know what else to say about that.
Yeah, I agree. Last point for me, the offseason was not great because of, again, the duration, how long this all takes for all of the exciting stuff to play out. And I say this from an outsider looking in at Mike doing NFL stuff, where like for the 3 or 4 days of NFL free agency, he is dead to the world. Our site is basically overloaded with people coming to, like, in a good way, of people coming to look at data on the site. Whereas MLB is just like so long and drawn out, and we're just for 4 months, both of us are checking our phones looking for updates. Whereas everything else is so compacted. These other sports jam it into a smaller amount of time. It's super exciting, easy to follow, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my gripe on the offseason, if you will. They just need to, again, figure out a way to fix that. So, well,
we're only, what's today, March? We're only, I don't know, about 20 months away from the lockout. So there'll be plenty of time to talk about how to fix Major League Baseball at that point in time. Thanks, man. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, man.